What is personal brand? And why all of a sudden is everybody talking about it like it's a really important aspect of our lives as small business owners? Well, simply personal brand is what people say and think about when you're not around. When you're not around to talk about yourself, it's what people will talk about you when you're not around. So it'd be things like what you do, what you're known for, who you are, what your reputation is, the kind of person you are. Are you nice? Are you nasty? Are you a bit of a hard ass, or you're someone who's a bit of a walkover? All those things form what your personal brand is. It's often said that that any kind of brand really is what people say about your business when you're not around, so that it's what they truly think and truly believe what that is. And it could be things like, some people have a very strong opinion about Qantas as a brand. They feel very strongly about it. It's the spirit of Australia, been around for over 100 years. It's definitely like a core part of the Australian identity when it comes to travel. But others will look at it and say, well, my grandfather, he was treated like crap by them and he was sacked back in the 80s. And they'll have a very different opinion of what that brand is. And this is why so many companies spend so much money working on their brand, making sure people have certain opinions about their brand and have, they can feel like they can control what people are thinking, so that talk when they're not around can be positive. It can be growth oriented. It can be that people have had a good experience with that. And you obviously want that for yourself, but you don't always have that control. Someone like Kylie Jenner, who's one of the Kardashians, well, one of the she's the Jenner, but she's a Kardashian, if you know what I mean. If you know anything about reality TV, you'll know that she is known for reality TV. She is known for lip fillers. She's known for like wearing excessive amounts of makeup and being very fake, having lots of touch-ups done in her photography. The photo you see on the right, even though that is apparently her, it looks nothing like her in real life. She looks nothing like that. Her face shape has been contoured. The makeup has been touched up in Photoshop. She has a huge social media following, but she's also known as being very unfriendly and very unapproachable. Her personal brand is around being someone who is incredibly untouchable, aspirational. She wants little girls to aspire to want to be like her. And the way of her making money is to basically promote herself as a brand, have other brands pay her money to promote them, or to create her own products, such as makeup kits and foundations, lip liners, a lot of lip cosmetics, because she's quite known for her very full lips, which are fake. She has lip fillers done and she admits that she has that. So part of her personal brand is knowing all about that. Now, I'm hoping that none of us on this call tonight are looking to be the next Kylie Jenner. If we are, well, we may have missed the bus. Though you can be a little less Kylie and a little more Tom Holland. He's the latest star of Spider-Man. So Spider-Man No Way Home, I think is the most recent Spider-Man movie that happened. And he's known to be cute, sweet, polite, very friendly, very approachable, charmingly English with a gorgeous little accent. But he goes around and makes life very fun for all the people in here. Just been asked from someone, why would someone be seen as unfriendly and unapproachable like Kylie Jenner, who has a large social media following? Great question. That's simply because she wants people to be like her, which is not necessarily unapproachable, unfriendly, but to want to look like her. And she doesn't do that. Like, she wants to create a persona, kind of like the royal family does. The royal family does not want to be seen as approachable. Princess Diana was very, very different with that. She wanted to be approachable. She wanted to touch the sick and the ailing. She wanted to be amongst those people, but the very hoi polloi kind of environment of the royal family, they have built a very long-standing brand about being aloof and unobtainable, so that they could be seen as stable, they could be seen as reliable, they could be seen as aspirational. People would want to be more like us. If they want to be more like us, then they will respect us more. And I suppose that's Kylie's whole personal brand. The same with people like Kim Kardashian, that whole family has been set up to be aspirational. People will want to be like us. They want to be with us. They're going to buy the things that we tell them to buy, and they make their money out of that, rather than being, oh, I'd love to be friends with Kylie. It's more like, I'd like to be like Kylie. I want to be untouchable. I want to be separate. I want to be aloof. So it's a very complex thing of what kind of personal brand you choose. It's just as valid as Tom. Tom is known to be super friendly, super nice, super approachable when he's amongst his fans, but he's also taking a bit of time off movies because he couldn't really keep that up. It was a persona that he created for the movies, but it may not be who he really is. He's had to put on an act to be Tom Holland actor as opposed to Tom Holland who likes wearing pajama pants around the house and wants to sleep all day and rest and put on 15 kilos because he just wants to rest from it all. Then what do your colleagues, friends, family, and others think of you when you're not around? This gives you an idea of what your personal brand may already be. In fact, we do all have a personal brand, whether we like it or not. People have a thought about our business. People have a thought about who we are. And sometimes that's not who we really are. Sometimes the opinion that people have of us is a little bit off. I know I've been told before that in social circumstances, I look like I come across as aloof and quite hard to approach and quite formidable. And I laugh at that because I think of it like I'm the biggest marshmallow ever. I'm a massive softie. I have this like huge amount of empathy for people. Where if I see someone who's standing in the corner of the room all by themselves, my heart just bleeds for them. I want to walk over there and approach them. And maybe that's not what people see. All they see is when I'm nervous and when I'm a little bit tired, I tend to stand back and not get in the middle and the thick of things because whilst I am a social person, I'm not necessarily sociable. So that was a real surprise coming back to me that someone actually thought that of me. They actually had that feeling of me. I found out recently that in Bundaberg, some organization there had put this idea in their heads that I was bad mouthing another organization that I don't even know. I don't even know the organization that they think I'm bad mouthing. But now I remember the conversation about actually they were bad mouthing that organization to me on the phone. So it's interesting that that particular reputation, that aspect of a brand has been branded against me by someone who is a colleague who works for Business Station in Bundaberg, and that's what they heard. And so that's how he came into it. And his own experience with me has been anything but that. He hasn't experienced any of that. So he said, and I'm so glad he brought it up because I would never have had any clue. I might have turned up for an event in Bundaberg and having not known that. So I now know that there's things that people think about me when I'm not around, just like you. There's going to be things that people think about you when you're not around. That forms part of your personal brand. So you might think, oh, well, I don't give a crap what other people think of me. And I'm not wasting my time worrying about what people think of me. And that's completely fine as well. You can live that way, but remember that you don't live in isolation. And this is not just about you. It's also about your brand. It's all about your business. And if you're hiring people and you've got employees or contractors, it's also about them, that your reputation, your brand can have an impact in on that. So I know that we're constantly told with motivational posters that we shouldn't be thinking about what other people think because it's none of our business. But the reality is when it's more than just you and it's a business and you've got goals you want to achieve, just like a celebrity, just like a movie star, there's going to have to be a certain amount of maybe not editing, but a little bit of pre-thought before you act in a certain way in public. Whether you decide to have a rant in a Karen-like state or like I saw a Ken-like state, because there's the Ken is the male version of the Karen. So if you have a Karen or a Ken attack in a restaurant or in a supermarket, or you have a yelling match in a car park and people see it. All these things are going to have some kind of impact on who you are and what stories are told about you. What the reality is, though, that when you do create a personal brand, you can feel comfortably in control of telling your story, particularly if that personal brand is based authentically on who you are. If it's really about you, stories that really occurred, things that really happened, things that you've really been through, the struggles that you really have, and the successes you've had as well. When it's absolutely true, when it cannot be denied by anyone that it's true, then you can be very comfortably in control of that story. Um, Otherwise, you could be anxiously obsessed with what people think about you. And there's two very different ways of looking at it. You don't want to necessarily anxiously obsessed about all this, but you do want to be comfortably in control. You want to be able to create a brand for yourself that is true, reliable, and easy to live up to. Seriously, if you're not a super friendly person and you're not perky and you're not all animated and fun all the time, pretending not to be, you're going to trip yourself up within a month. Like you're not going to be able to keep it up. But if you're someone who is a straight down the line, straight shooter, straight talker kind of person, there's parts of that that actually are quite refreshing and people will warm to. You look at the brands around people like Pauline Hanson, for instance. One of the great things she gets told is that she says it how it is, and she doesn't edit herself to be politically correct, that kind of thing. So not that I'd ever be necessarily in support of what Pauline Hanson likes to say, but I'd say that she has built a personal brand around the straight shooting, straight talking, says it the way it is kind of mentality. So then, what personal brand have you already got? Have you got a personal brand already? What do people think of you as a person, as a professional, as a business owner? What is your personal brand? Now, your personal brand matters because simply it creates more opportunities for you. There's a ton of opportunity in the world when people know, like, and trust you. People won't trust you until they like you. People won't like you until they know who you are. And to know who you are comes, especially in the solopreneur community where you're a sole trader, you're just on your own. Your business is you. You are your business. You're not necessarily a product, for instance, that you can pick up and say, this is me, this is my business right here in my hand, this is my product. It's not about that. It tends to become about the person behind the product. And even if you're selling a product, an individual thing that you can pick up, touch, and hold, you still may find that the way you present that product, the way you are acting around it, the way you sell it, the way you introduce it to people will make a huge difference. I saw somebody on LinkedIn today going through a massive, rant about why he's such a grumpy person. And he is. He's grumpy. He's just cantankerous, always contrarian, and he's going to great deal of pains to tell us about how that's because he's an innovator. That's because he is, someone who thinks differently, painting himself as some kind of martyr in the form of, a Steve Jobs or an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos. And I'm looking at him just going, mate, you live in the suburbs in a rundown house with a rundown car. You're not in the position to be that nasty person. Even when they were growing their businesses, they still had to put on some very good face. They had to seize those opportunities as people who were approachable and friendly and conversational and not just trying to tear people down at every opportunity they had. So being the cantankerous old man or the cantankerous old woman doesn't necessarily bode well for finding those opportunities in the first place. People will see you as an innovator, certainly, but the first thing I'll think about you, even in the startup world, the investment world, the funding world, the business world, yes, they may think, yes, you're brilliant, but I wouldn't want to have him around for dinner because he would just drive everyone mad. Or I wouldn't want to invite her around I wouldn't want to go and have coffee with her because I'd just sit there being preached to. So those opportunities don't tend to come knocking that well if you're not able to have a brand or a presence about you that people know, like, and trust. And if they don't know, like, and trust you, then why would they have anything to do with you? Now, nearly 35% of the Australian workforce is made up of people like us, freelancers, contract workers, entrepreneurs, people who don't have a job and not employed by this. So that's the large percentage, really, of the Australian workforce. It's a lot more than we would have thought of. It's a little bit less than what it is in America, but it's a lot more than what it is in the UK. Now, amongst that, 70% of employers actually screen potential employees via their social media and Google searches. People, without knowing it, have a personal brand. Even if they are wanting to work in the corporate sector, there are many, many times you would know that people have had to remove social media posts, remove social media profiles just as they've gone for jobs, or they've missed out on jobs or even lost jobs because of the way they behave in public and social media. And we've seen people, particularly lately, people try and discredit certain personalities in Australia by showing, times when they had, drug paraphernalia in photos in the background when they were much, much younger, or 18-year-olds who had a line of cocaine when they were 18 and now 25 and can't seem to get any sort of, move in life because someone keeps digging up all the past from them. So with that, we know that personal brand is also reputation, but not just who we are now, it's who we were back in the past. That's why it's really hard to be someone you're not, because eventually you will be found out. So if you want to be an anti-drug crusader, make sure there's nothing about drugs in your past. If you want to be anti-anything, make sure there's none of that thing that you're anti in your past, because then it makes you faking it. You become like Kylie Jenner's lips. You may be incredibly popular, but as soon as people start, to dislike you, it's like a pile on. Everyone piles on. We've seen this with Grace Tame, for instance, the pile on that's happened to her, because she had the audacity to stand up for her beliefs, or as some people would say, she has no manners. There's been a pile on with that, and her brand is very split. There's a brand of people who think she's a hero. There's another brand of people who say that she's actually disgusting. So your brand has to be something you have a bit more control over. Unfortunately, Grace has lost a lot of control of what her personal brand is. In a year's time, that may be very different. In 5 years' time, she may be seen very different. Like Monica Lewinsky. Monica Lewinsky is a perfect example of someone who has completely and utterly rebuilt her brand. She has gone from being a young intern who let a man do something with her that was completely consensual, but she was written off as the scapegoat and as the villain in the story. But she's rebuilt her life now that she's in her, gosh, she'd have to be in her 40s now, and she's now a very popular speaker. She's a corporate coach. She is hired as a contractor and as a consultant in some of the biggest firms in the country when it comes to this whole idea of personal brand. 40% of employers check on staff social media for compliance, and that's going to happen with you too if you're trying to get things like jobs, things like speaking gigs, or whether you're trying to become some person of influence, a key person of influence in this country and beyond. People are going to be checking everything you do on your social media. And the minute that you sort of go off on a rant edge, or you decide that this one thing is one thing you cannot stand enough, that you have to make comments on it, well, then be willing to be judged upon that. And you may say at the time in a cloud of anger or indignation that, well, I don't care what people think of me. This is what I truly believe. I need to stand up for my principles. Just decide whether that's the hill that you want your personal brand to die on. It does require some editing. It requires some forethought. Unless you want to be that person, we've got plenty of examples of highly influential and highly successful people, even in Australia, who have amazing personal brands because they're outspoken about something. You look at people like Paul Murray, Ray Hadley. They're all pundits and journalists and talkback radio hosts and talkback TV hosts that have gone. Alan Jones is another example of that. They've all got incredibly strong personal brands because they've stayed very much true to their story throughout the years. Alan Jones particularly has survived many assaults on his character and personal brand because of the inconsistency between the lifestyle he leads and the political views that he holds. Yet he survived through that by becoming very, very, very consistent right throughout his life. And that consistency is what helps you to stay on top of it. Now, the average time of length of a job in Australia is about 3.5 years. So at some point, if you're working a job or working a contract, the average contract's about 9 months. You'll be looking for another job or another contract, which means that you're back on that sort of that cycle of people looking at who you are, what your personal brand happens to be. So some examples of some really solid and successful personal brands would be people like Marie Kondo. Now, if you don't know who she is known as the organizational queen. One of her great sayings is that comes forth as a part of her brand is that if it doesn't spark joy, throw it out. And that's helping people to declutter, to get rid of all the clutter and the things in their life that don't spark joy, that are not of any practical purpose or use or of any sort of real sentimental attachment apart from being addicted to clutter. She has a strong personal brand by being organized, sweet, consistent, and always herself. She always wears things which are very, very similar. She has a skirt and top mentality. She stays with the same haircut. She provides the exact same kind of person every time she appears in a television show. She speaks Japanese, very poor English. She continues to be herself. She continues to do the same thing over and over and over. Her brand is strong. She's sold books, TV shows. She's been interviewed from one end of the planet to the other, all because she had a great idea, a great concept, and she managed to package that into a petite brand that people think is adorable. Whether they're men or women, they just think she's absolutely adorable, but she's incredibly brutal when it comes to throwing things out. And that has become her personal brand. She's become an international superstar because of that. Another example, Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, as he's known. He's a potty mouth Jersey boy who is like 5 foot nothing tall, and can come across as quite aggressive sometimes, but his personal brand is always the same. He has the same message and has had the same message for close on 20 years now. He's one of the original YouTube superstars when he started up Wine Library Television on YouTube as a way of helping to sell more of his father's wine from his chain of liquor stores. So he didn't inherit those stores. He had to go and make his own thing. And his whole shtick is about working hard for someone else, and then working hard for yourself, finding the opportunities, knowing that the game is more important than the outcome, that he's addicted to the game, he's the hustle guy. If you ever think of the hustle, the working hard, the giving up everything you have in order to achieve this great goal in your life, which for him is to own the New York Jets football team. Don't know if I've got a shared sort of goal with Gary in that, but I would say that I definitely have goals. And so I'm very highly influenced by someone like Gary V. His brand is always consistent. He swears on everything he does, but he does control himself when he's speaking at conferences or being on broadcasts where he knows that swearing isn't allowed and will get him cancelled. That said, as much as he swears, as much as he sticks to that hustle culture, and people have criticized him from one end to the other. I did myself until I started actually listening to what he said, and it made sense to me. And so his personal brand for me is quite strong. One of the great personal brands of the last 5 years is Professor Brene Brown. Brene Brown has married the whole concept of personal development to science. She's a scientist herself, and she's able to marry those two things together. Her personal brand is women's empowerment. You think of women's empowerment, you think of Brene Brown. You think of people taking control of their lives and understanding who they are as women, you think of Brene Brown. She's incredible. I'm not even a woman, and I follow her religiously. I think she's one of the great speakers and great thinkers of our generation, and I continue to be amazed by the things she comes up with and the influence she's having in this world. Her brand is incredibly strong, from TED Talks through to conferences, through to her podcasts, through to all of her YouTube videos. She is consistently Brene Brown. She doesn't flip, she doesn't flop, she stays consistent to her story. Are you seeing a pattern here? I bet you are. You're seeing a pattern here of consistency. Everyone here is consistent according to the brand they have. And now Lisa Wadigo is actually a colleague of mine through the Facebook or Meta community trainer team. And she's a First Nations woman who is completely consistently involved with promoting Black business, promoting equal rights, for closing the gap, for employment opportunities, education opportunities, and land rights for Indigenous Australians. She is not apologetic about this. Even in our training, she was outspoken, and we all love that about her because she's never been any different. She's always been the same. She is respectful. She is always respectful, and she works together with people because she believes through collaboration and allies that First Nations lives can be made much better. So she does that whilst maintaining a business of her own, a couple of businesses of her own, whilst being a mum, being someone who's got stuff all over the country going on, constantly being put into positions where she needs to speak and to present. But all the time, she is the same person all the time, speaking for bigger women, speaking for Aboriginal women, speaking for women in general, and speaking for opportunities for Indigenous Australians to do so much better in life. Again, that consistency, that brand. Now, these are 4 people who I've mentioned to you who are based upon me either knowing them or understanding who they are. Now, Lisa's the only one I've met. I haven't met any of the others. So I don't know whether their personal brand carries over to their personal life, but Lisa's does, and her business life. And I know that she's absolutely consistent the whole way through. So 4 incredible people who are very clear what they're on about. They are very clear about who they are and what they're doing. They have a consistency, and this is important, a consistency of who they show up as. They're easy to find. They're easy to follow. You can look up all those names and follow them easily. But perhaps the most important point in here is they're not for everyone. Not everyone's going to like them. Not everyone's going to love them. Not everyone's going to relate to them. They are kind of divisive sometimes. Brene can speak in ways which are kind of divisive. Gary Vee certainly is. He doesn't seem to care too much about that. Lisa can be quite political at times because what she's trying to achieve in the world requires political punches to be thrown. So, what do we then need to do ourselves? How are we clear about what we're about? How can we be consistent in the person that we show up as? How we become easy to find and easy to follow, and not, be niche enough to be not for everybody, but well known enough for people to refer us? How do you know that you've actually got a good personal brand? You have a good personal brand when people don't even realize that you may have moved on from a contract or moved to another workplace. They just see you at work. They just see you doing what you do. They just see you presenting yourself and showing up as who you are. You don't suddenly wear a different, different logo on your shirt and become a different person. You're this single person the whole way through. They might have seen you in 5 different work shirts. They may have seen you in 15 different jobs, and you're still the same Aaron, Gail, Nicola, Peter, Kat, or BT that you are anywhere else, or the same Dante that you are anywhere else, that people can not even notice that you did. I know for me, when I moved from a consulting firm over to Business Station to work in the contract with these guys, people didn't realize that happened 2.5 years ago. They just, they had no idea, because I was still being myself. They didn't even notice I was wearing a different shirt. I was just moving in a different circle, but being the exact same person. That gave me a great deal of comfort. When you're still friends with people you used to work with in other works and other places and other lifetimes, that shows that you are showing up as yourself. That shows that you've got a good, solid personal brand amongst the people around you. That you are the same today as you were back then, even though you might be a little bit different and work a bit different, but ultimately you're still that same person they know and love and trust. You'll know you've got a good personal brand when people ask you for advice in your area of expertise. When the former Lord Mayor of Darwin called me today, I was surprised. Like, oh, how do you know me? He said, oh, everyone knows you're the guy to turn to when you have problems with Facebook. I'm like, really? That's the personal brand I've developed. Is that first, I'm approachable, but second, that I am someone who is effective in a certain area. That's a personal brand I like to know I have. And whilst I couldn't help them straight away, I was able to at least give them that empathy and a little bit of credibility to show them there might be another way of looking at this to get the problem solved. And of course, they were able to do that. And so that personal brand is then maintained. So personal brand doesn't have to be big like Kylie Jenner or big like Kim Kardashian or like Brene Brown and Gary Vaynerchuk. It can be something as simple as someone knows to call you because that's the kind of thing you're known for being able to help with. That's magic to have that in your life. Yes, it may be annoying sometimes when there's too many calls coming through, but isn't it great to know that you are known as the woman or as the man or as the person who can solve those problems? That's the power of personal branding. It brings work to you. Yes, sometimes people don't want to pay for that work, but most of the time they're not really worried about the money. They're just worried about solving the problem, which you are known to solve. People may refer you to other people to you without being asked to refer you. This is where people become your sales rep for your business, for yourself. If you're consulting, if you're a coach, something like that, people will recommend you without being asked to do it. They get no reward whatsoever out of it. I've now got a system in place where this is inspired by an accountant friend of mine who I constantly send new clients to. She takes me out for lunch every time. And I mentioned this in a meeting last week that I didn't understand why she kept taking me out to lunch. And I'm like, I love a free lunch. Thank you very much. Turns out now I put the two and two together and went, oh, every time I refer her someone, she takes me out to lunch. Like, she's actually rewarded that. So as your part of your personal brand could be that you love it when people refer to you. So people want to refer to you because they know, number one, they won't be embarrassed by it. They can trust that referral, that you will do the right thing by the person they're referring. And there might even be some kind of reward to that. There might even be a way that they can, pay you in some way or take you out for lunch, as I get to go with Michelle, without there being a big problem. That shows a strong personal brand. So how do you start a personal brand? To last my water, I better not get too thirsty. How do you start to be a personal brand? How do you start to be someone that people do refer things to, that people do come to you for certain things in a certain way? Well, number one, you've got to work out what your values are. And working out your values can be a very long process, or it could be a really, really simple process. It's just 3 or 4 things that you want to show up as every day. Who do you want to show up as? We ask that question. You could be authentic, honest. You could be all about the hustle or or slowing down. You could be about equality or women's empowerment. You could be someone who's effective. You could be someone who stands up for LGBTIQA plus, Aboriginal business, opportunity, wisdom, peace, collaboration, whatever. It could be any of these things, and then hundreds more things. There probably on here could be a bunch of different things that you could form your values around. You only need 3 or 4, and you could look at that and go, what are the 3 that I could pick out of that? If I'm really about, progressiveness, and I'm really about, the power of wisdom, and I want to be self-sufficient and approachable and want to be known as these things, this is where you choose the things that are at your very core. You choose these things very carefully. They have to be things that come from where you are. My core values of 10 years ago are very different to my core values of today, because I had to work through a lot of stuff to get to my core values today. My core values now are all about being honest, vulnerable, humble, and effective. I am honest in a way that disarms a lot of people these days, and I've certainly lost friends through it, because I've seen now that I don't have the time nor the energy to waste on what we call energy vampires, people who just suck the life out of you. Vulnerability had to be, well, if I'm going to be vulnerable, I have to be willing to not be afraid of being rejected. I need to be humble, which means I need to be able to tell the painful side of what I do, not just the successful side of what I do. And being effective means that I've got to actually say, I've got to deliver what I'm saying I'm going to deliver. If I've got all these clients wanting all this work, I've got to actually deliver all that stuff. Otherwise, I'm just another sales guy. So what are yours? So think about how these values will live out in your life. So in my case, the living out of these things will be, when I'm being honest, is turning around to a colleague who may say, "Hey, I need to get your help with this," and I say, "Look, I really need to get this thing done, but can we do this at 3 p.m.?" That's being honest. I don't have the time right now, to giving an option. I'm being honest, but I'm not using my honesty as a big sword. A lot of people think, "Oh, I'm just being honest," or, "Oh, I'm just being candid," or, I say it like it is, but they use those words like swords, like weapons. Honesty doesn't mean being a dick. Okay, but I'm being honest can actually be incredibly powerful and incredibly empowering to other people, because you're not saying no. And sometimes you will say no, but you're not generally saying no. What you're saying is, just not now. Can I do this a little bit later on? Being vulnerable in terms of my values means that I might have to say to someone, "Look, I can't really do this right now because I've got some family things going on and I'm just a little distracted." So you're not going to get the real me. You're not going to get the best me. And that's enough to share with someone. You're having to, come up with stories. You're not going to have to. These are when things are real in your life, when you're very distracted, when you're sick, when you're very sick. Like I'm working sweat right now, and I've got a fever that seems to be coming on, and it's making me very uncomfortable and having to flap my shirt about right now. And I'm in a cold, air-conditioned space. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be really scattered about it. I can just say, "Look, I can't do this consultation right now because it's going to take brain power and attention I just don't have." Being humble means saying that when someone wants to congratulate you for something, that you remember that it's not just you that got yourself there. That, "Oh, there's a whole team behind me that made this happen." It's like going up for a speech at the Oscars and saying, "Yes, I was amazing in that movie. Oh, I won this award because I was phenomenal." It's more, they're always thanking the people around them that helped make them the person they are, from their family to the directors to the writers to the people who helped make them the Academy Award winner. Being effective for me means that I can present 2 different ways to someone and say, "Look, we can do this thing. We can say there's an easy way around this, and then there's a more effective way. But I want to take you down the effective way. I'll give you the choice, but I want to show you the effective way to do this." So those are my values. That's how they work out as a colleague. But as a friend, they work out a little bit differently. If I'm being honest, I need to ask some people sometimes, if they're going through something really bad, and this is something I had to learn, the more female friends I had, that sometimes when someone comes to you and starts telling you about a problem they're having, they're not looking necessarily for you to fix it. And men, we tend to want to fix things. We see the problem, we want to make it go away because it makes us uncomfortable. As I observed more of my female friends interacting with each other, I realized that sometimes not just women, but people actually just want to be listened to. And so my honesty now comes out with friends and me going, "Look, would you like my advice or would you like to be listened to?" And about 80% of the times they say, "I just need to vent." And I go, "Cool, go for it." And then I know what I'm doing. I don't go into rescue Messiah mode. My honesty actually saves me from making a vast social mistake where I'm actually intruding in someone's personal time that they've trusted me with to try and solve their problems. This is how your values help form your personal brand. It means that someone can come to you and feel trusted that you'll deal with them right. Being vulnerable means me saying, I'm struggling a little today. I just need a little bit of alone time when I need to, have some time away from friends who can be a little high maintenance sometimes. Or being humble says, thank you. It means the world to hear that when someone says something nice to you. Or being effective is like, look, if you like, we can work on some strategies together. So as I bring all these in, I'm hoping that these are the things I'm known for. And so with you, with your particular set of values. Like I said, there's tons of them. Look at it. That's just a list of the ones I came up with. There's hundreds more you can come up to. So what are your personal values? Who do you want to show up as when it comes to forming your personal brand online? I've just shown you how it plays out in my life and what mine are. Now you can look at it as how it plays out in storytelling. When you're storytelling about your business, not making up stories, I'm talking about, you're really telling the story of your business. I can be honest and say that I failed in my first business, and it was kind of spectacular to see from the outside looking in. I'm sure it was highly entertaining to watch, but for me, it was absolutely heart-wrenching. It was a horrible thing to go through. But I failed my first business, and I failed my second business too, mind you. It wasn't until my third that I actually did something right. And I can be vulnerable by saying, even today, that little voice asked me, who do you think you are when it comes to dealing with my imposter syndrome? That's me being vulnerable. That's me being truthful about a struggle that I have in storytelling for business. Being humble is saying, well, years ago, I dreamed of being on this stage speaking in front of these hundreds of people right now, or being on a webinar like this, where people are actually taking time out of their day to listen to what I have to say about personal branding. That is humbling stuff. And then my effectiveness value plays out of saying, if I wasn't stupid back then in like 2010, this is the kind of thing I would have done. If I wasn't so stupid and actually listened to the advice I've been given, this is the road I would have gone down, and I would have saved myself a lot of pain and time and money. So how will your particular values play out? Think about how it's going to play out with your workplace, or the people you work with, or the strategic partners, or the contractors or the other business owners that you work alongside of. Think about how your personal values will play out. Also, how it plays out in your real life. Because if it's not the same between real life and your friends and family, you're going to be a fraud. You're going to look like an absolute fake. It's no use me being, all very Yoda-like and wise in this business world, and my mum just looks at me and says, "Who are you kidding yourself? You're an absolute hot mess." And so I need to be the same person and carry those authentic values through the rest of my life. Like you'll have to do the same. And then also, when it comes to storytelling about your business, if those areas aren't aligned, then your brand is broken. It's not right. It's hanging on a house of cards. All it is one social media post or some viral post about you being posted by someone else, away from that whole house of cards tumbling down. This is not you trying to create yourself as a celebrity when you're a teenager by pretending to be someone else and playing dress ups. This is about the reality of aligning who you are with what you say you are. So think about it. Who do you want to show up as? That is reflective of who you are. That's important, not just that who you want to show up as, but who do you want to show up as that is a reflection of who you already are. If you're a bit loud, understand that that's going to be part of your personal brand, because it's not something you're going to be able to change easily. When you get to our age, seriously, I'm not saying everyone in this room is the same age, but I'm 47 now. There's so many parts of my personality are not going to change overnight, and they're going to take a lot to change them if I really wanted to change them. Now, I've spent the last 5 to 10 years building the person I really believe I am. So who is that person for you? Who are you really? And how is that going to reflect in what the world is going to see of you? Number two, when it comes to starting a personal brand, who are you and what do you want to accomplish? So important to know this. This is all about taking an honest, authentic look at who you are. Remember, we were talking about those values that you want to show up as. Well, it all comes from this. It's knowing who you actually are. What drives you? What areas do you excel in? What work drains you? What work fuels you? What makes you feel alive? What makes you feel dead? What settings do you work best in? Are you a networker, or are you someone who's better behind a keyboard? What industries do you find interesting? And where do you want to be at the end of the road? Where do you want to be at the point with your career? Do you want to go from being the crazy startup person to being the guide who's wisely showing other people how to do that too? And what impact or legacy do you want to leave? What do you want people to know about you even after you're gone? These are all questions you ask yourself as someone who's building a personal brand. Knowing who you are attracts the people just like you to be around you. These are the people who are going to be driven by the same things as you. They're going to see lots and lots of power and value in who you are and your point of view. They're likely to follow you. On LinkedIn, I find that I'm surrounding myself with all these very motivated, inspirational, encouraging people. There's a young guy, not even young, he's probably in his mid-30s. He's got bits of grey hair in his temples, so he can't be too young. But his name's Ryan Melton. I follow him on LinkedIn. He's going through a 90-day challenge at the moment to lose weight, get motivated, change his life to become a better person than what he was before. Every day I check in on him to see how he's going. I do not know Ryan. I'll probably never meet Ryan in my life, but for some reason, this fella just grabbed my attention. I look at what he's doing. I see the lack of engagement of people following his story, and I'm like, that's not going to happen. This guy, I'm not going to let this happen. That's a part of my values. I'm driven by the same motivations that he's. I see the value in his point of view, and I'm following him. And people will do that with you too. He has got a strong personal brand. He's got a similar following level to what I've got. Maybe 1,000 more people. Not that I'm counting at all, but he's got a decent following. I've got a lot more engagement, but I think it's not right for someone who does what he does not to get that engagement. So I give that to him. What are you great at? What's the things that you find easy to do and that you also happen to love doing? This is not necessarily saying that just because you like scented candles means you need to drop everything in and be the scented candle person. This is about saying what you're great at and what you love doing, the things you're good at and the things you like doing. And if you can find those two things, this is like the perfect marriage of what to do and what to be known as in a personal brand. Because if you're great at it, you'll keep showing up again and again as being able to deliver it. And if you love doing it, you'll want to keep showing up and doing it again and again and again. I love doing these webinars. I love the interaction with them. I love the feedback I get in the chat window. I love, hearing back from people later on through LinkedIn who said, "Oh, thank you so much for that webinar. I love this." And I'm particularly good at doing these as well. So I keep doing them again and again and again, 2-3 times a week. If you're great at it, that means you've got credibility at it. You lead by example as someone who's great at it. Your brand is that you're good at it, you're credible at it, you can teach others about it. You are seen as the expert in the room at this thing. If you love doing it, then you're enthusiastic, your communication's clear, you're, that word again, consistent, and you become someone that others want to be like. As much as I don't like Kylie Jenner, she loves the life she lives, and she's very consistent about it, which makes her quite aspirational. People want to be like her, even though her life is so out of touch with reality. They see her enthusiasm, they see how she communicates, how she's consistently Kylie, and people aspire to be like her. Number 4, what is uniquely you? What is the thing about you that's just so you? What Aaron is the Aaron thing? What's the thing that goes, "Oh, that's so Aaron"? Peter, what's the Peter thing? Nicola, or Nicola, what is the thing that people say is just you? Gail, you would definitely have a thing which people would say, "Oh, that is so Gail." I know I've got a "that's so Dante" thing. For me, it's spelling errors. And they're stupid spelling errors. That's not a strength for me. What my strength is how I respond to people going, "Oh my God, get your spelling right. Oh my God, your grammar's incorrect." They're typos. They're not actually. I'm a very good speller. I've been all my life. I've been an excellent speller and had an excellent grasp of grammar. But I move so fast sometimes. My fingers go in directions that my brain is not going in. So my strengths are how I respond to it. So think about for yourself. What do you get complimented on? What do people say about you all the time that's just so you? "Oh, you're so organized. I wish I was as organized as you." That's something I get a lot. I would never have thought 10 years ago I'd be the organized guy, but I Marie Kondoed my life. And see, I mean, when you've got a personal brand, you're even referring to someone who's got a personal brand as a description, not even like she's now a noun. It's like Googling something. You're not going, "I'm not searching for something, I'm Googling it." What are the things that you've excelled at in the past? What are the achievements you've had in the past? We've all got some. We've all got something we're really good at. And what is the something that you do that you're better than most others at it? For me, it's presenting information about the Facebook family of apps and how to use it. It could be also about, growing your brand on social media. I'm very, very good at that, and I'm better at that than most other people, because I've had to excel at it in the past, and I get very complimented on it on a daily basis on platforms like LinkedIn. So what are yours? What are the things that you get complimented on? What have you excelled at? What do you do better than most others? And what is just so you? What is your thing? Start talking about those things. I sometimes find it's nice to start talking about the things I'm a bit klutzy at, the things I'm a bit like a bit really crap at, because those are all my strengths because I am succeeding despite them. So they become part of my unique, goofy way of presenting sometimes is like, oh, let me tell you a story about when I really, really failed becomes a very big strength of mine. So you may find that for you, it's talking about your successes, talking about your failures, talking about the struggles to get where you are. Nobody goes and watches a movie about a person who's born rich and goes through their life without any sort of hassles or any sort of obstacles to overcome. It's a boring story, but we will watch Batman, where yes, he was born rich, but his parents died right in front of him. And he then went into a dark place where he had to be brought up and trained by their butler Alfred into becoming something more than he was before, to hopefully become the superhero that he one day would be, that all those strengths would come out of it. Now, will you don the Batman mask and put on the black clothing? Probably not. But be specific about how you overcame your problems. Be very specific about how your unique skills and the personality traits you had helped save the day, whether it was your day, a client's day, a business's day, or even save someone's life. And what is it about you that's so uniquely you that helped you win the day? You might be the eternal optimist. That's a strength. Keep that optimism going. You may be a person who is uniquely skilled at being able to organize things or uniquely skilled at being able to calm people down. You may have a personality trait that makes you cut through the crap and see the truth. These are your strengths. These come into your personal brand. They all become it. You are not trying to build someone you're not. I know when we look at personal branding and influence, we look at the fakeness of things. We look at the bikinis under the waterfalls in Bali, or we look at, the people trying to sell makeup brands and or trying to sell pretend that they've got Lamborghinis and fly in private jets when we know damn well they don't. Their personal brands are broken and not to be trusted, and people do not trust them because they do not own a Lamborghini, or they do not own, or we know they cannot possibly own that because those things are ridiculously expensive. Who then is going to be your audience? Once you've got all that together, you know who you are, you know what you're trying to be, you know who you're trying to try, you know what you're, there's no cognitive dissonance between who you are and who you say you are. Then who is the audience that's going to take you on? Who's the people who are going to learn more about you and want to engage closer with you? That's where you look at a broad area of interest. That's something that you can speak to. Then you find a specific type of people in that broad area of interest that you're trying to appeal to. And then finally, a really specialized area of expertise. Go broad, then start narrowing it down, niching it down until you get to this little slice of life that you can speak to with credibility and with experience and with your personality that only you have. Those areas where you can speak. Now, you don't have to be, present the way I do. I've been public speaking since I was 5 years old, so I know how to do this stuff. But you bring you to all this. What's the broad area of interest where you can niche down to a very specialized area of expertise that you have with a specialized kind of person? Think about, the fact that broad areas of interest. If I was going to become a social media expert, well, the world's full of social media experts. Just ask them. If you want to be more niche, then you're more open to opportunities because that particular niche probably hasn't been tapped yet, particularly if you're in Australia and you're working with specific communities or specific genders or specific groups of people, that your niche may not have been tapped yet. So if you try to become someone who, say, wants to help women, that's very broad. There's hundreds and thousands of people who are working to help women, but then you might want to niche that down to women from migrant backgrounds. So I want to help women from migrant backgrounds. And then you'll scale it down again. Let's make it a little bit more niched. I want to help women from migrant backgrounds gain employment in Australia. That could become your thing. I know of a very, very a woman of great power. Her name is Nicole Brown. Is someone who I follow very closely on LinkedIn, who lives in the same town I do, and she wants to help Indigenous people from disadvantaged backgrounds to start their own businesses and to grow in those businesses, to employ other people, to bring people out of poverty and out of disadvantage into a bigger future. She doesn't just want to help Indigenous people. She goes, no, I want to help Indigenous people, youth particularly, in places where they don't have much to like going with school, no employment opportunities, no business opportunities, to start their own businesses, stay connected with country, and grow something huge in their lives. That's a cause people will get behind, because it's not just I want to help people. It's I want to help these people do this thing. It comes with less, more than just a big dream in the sky. It's very specific. And then once you've got all this together, and imagine when it comes to this, you're probably gonna have to watch this again. There's a ton of information, this 1 hour thing. We've only got what, 6 minutes left. You need to bring that brand online. How are you going to do that? Where are you going to do that? You're going to have your own personal website at some time. I've got danteandjames.com and I've had that site for a very, very long time. I saw very early on that it was important to have my name in a website. So you don't have to do anything very fancy. You can do it in a very, very easy way through Google sites. They're free. Just buy a domain name for about 18 bucks and you've got a website, and they're super easy to build. Wix or Weebly, another do-it-yourself thing. You don't have to go down the WordPress path or build a $15,000 personal website. Just do something simple to start with, something that matches who you are. If you have a simple message, these will work for you. I particularly push people towards Google sites, and through this program, you can actually get some help with that as well to build it. You'll include your about area, so a bit about your interests, your education, your aspirations, who you are, a bit about your past experiences, your accomplishments, links to your social media properties, what your value proposition is, what's unique about you, what are you offering to the world. You may later on down the track have professional photos and a professional logo of you, but I'm still yet to have pro photos done. I've just got photos from the photographers who took photos of me at conferences, and ones like selfies that I've taken up against the white wall. That's all I use for mine. Or my partner took a photo of me when I was in Adelaide recently, and I've now used that photo as my profile photo for just about everything. You would have seen it a little bit earlier, and you'll see it at the end of this presentation as well. I didn't get any pros to do it. Himanshu is definitely not a professional photographer. Testimonials, what other people say about you, and very clear call to action, how people can work with you and why they should work with you. Have a Facebook page, have an Instagram profile, a business one, have a LinkedIn company page and a personal profile. Consider TikTok. You don't have to go down TikTok, because I know it's all about dancing to music and being an idiot. It doesn't have to. I've got a TikTok and I get probably about between 200 and 1,000 views of the videos that I do every time. It's certainly a hell of a lot more than I get on Facebook, but I don't take it that seriously. I just post something that I post elsewhere. So consider having those social platforms. You don't have to really go deep. I'd say the only one to go deep for, if you're doing particularly solo stuff, sole trader stuff, is maybe LinkedIn. That's where you can get a lot of momentum. And for careers, it's the most appropriate place to do it as well. Now, as we come towards the end, we start looking at things like your content strategy. And your content strategy is going to be a bit of photos, a little bit of graphics, a little bit of video, a little bit of written stuff, particularly on LinkedIn. Writing stuff will often go much further than videos and photos will. But if you're going to TikTok and Facebook, well, then videos are going to be a better call for you. But some way you've got to have a content strategy to do that. We're not here to go through that, but think about your profile. The way that you put everything online is like a long, drawn out brain dump. What you're doing is creating a place where all your knowledge and your experience is presented online in some way, shape, or form, in broken little pieces that's helpful, actionable, inspirational, or entertaining. Choose two of those things. You don't need all four. I'm not very entertaining. I don't think I'm particularly inspirational, but I like to be helpful and provide things that are actionable. So I choose those first two, but you could be helpful and entertaining. You can be actionable and inspirational at the same time. Pick two out of those four and make that about the kind of content you're going to produce. And finally, look at building a community around that. I've built a community here in Darwin around the work that I do through the startup community and through the Darwin Small Business Network. Your community could be anything like that. It could be something where you're delivering your stuff one-to-many in workshops, or something that's easy to scale, like online courses, something that's easy for you to monetize. You work on the area that's going to help you in the area you're comfortable with. And you'll grow faster if you work in this one-to-many sort of thing, rather than just doing one-to-one advisory and one-to-one consultation. Otherwise, you have to charge too much for your time.